Asian markets rise on Tuesday following reports that US President-elect Donald Trump could adopt a more moderate tariff stance. Businesses in the UK plan to hike prices amid higher taxes and wage costs. And the sports broadcasting business is undergoing a major shake-up as viewership surges to a record high. Hello, I'm Taiba Aydin with the latest business and finance news here on TRT World. Shares in Asia rose on Tuesday following an overnight rally on Wall Street based on hopes that incoming US President-elect Donald Trump could adopt a less aggressive tariff stance than promised when he takes office. Tech stocks led gains, pushing Japan's Nikkei up 2.49% and triggering broader gains among its regional peers. The broad-based topics gained 1.32%. Global semiconductor stocks, including heavyweight Nvidia, climbed after contract electronics giant Foxconn announced record fourth quarter revenue, while chip manufacturer Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company hit a fresh high, building on the previous session's gains. It comes after the Washington Post reported on Monday that Trump aides were exploring tariff plans that would be applied to every country but only cover certain sectors deemed critical to national or economic security. For more, we're joined by Naeem Aslam, Chief Investment Officer at Zay Capital Markets. Good to see you, Naeem. Now, what's led investors to believe Trump won't be as aggressive with these trade tariffs?
Sure. Thanks for having me. Look, I think going into season 2 of Trump administration back in the White House, investors have been preparing for this particular moment. Investors have been very much engaging themselves in different activities in terms of a portfolio optimization and what to expect from season 2 of this administration. So this was very much priced into a larger extent that this time the tariffs will be applied. I mean, that is the definition for Trump being in the office, but they won't be that much detrimental. If you look at the tweet from the elected president as of yesterday, it made it very clear sense that this time is not going to be what it was during the first time, because he said it in the tweet very clearly that he is getting along very well with the president, President Xi Jinping over in China. So that gave investors and traders a lot more confidence that, okay, this time, yes, there will be tariffs, but the relationships will be contained in a way that it won't cause too much of a damage to the economic growth, global growth, and especially between the two major economies, and that is the United States and China. And based on that, that is a reaction that we are currently experiencing in the global markets.
And who would this more moderate stance benefit the most? Would that be the US or Asia or elsewhere?
I think it's going to be both sides, right? Because obviously China needs the United States needs China. So it's going to be on both sides. So you can't say that the one side is going to gain more. But having said that, if we just zoom out a little bit and then look at what happened in the previous cycle of his administration, it was mainly China which was losing. But at the same time, the United States also suffered heavy losses in terms of people moving away or started to think about moving away from the dollar-denominated world in order to avoid tariffs or to find other trade partners. So for us, I think it's a win-win situation if such scenario plays out going forward after January 20th.
And tech stocks in particular have seen the biggest move since Monday. What's in store for the tech sector going forward, particularly chip makers?
Yeah, so I think that is really interesting because I think investors are very much banking on that AI trade that we saw back in 2024. And then this is what the major aim is over here, that everything is very much pinned on what the new announcement is going to be from NVIDIA, how big this particular industry is going to be, because growth certainly seems to be only moving in one way direction, that is to the upside.
Okay, Naeem Aslam, we will have to leave it there. Thank you very much for your analysis.
Thank you for having me.
Now, the number of British businesses planning to raise prices in the coming months has surged, reflecting a sharp dip in confidence triggered by higher taxes and wage costs in the wake of the UK budget. In October, Chancellor Rachel Reeves announced a significant policy shift, raising employers' social security contributions to 15% from April. The government hopes the additional revenue will help revive the slowing economy, but businesses are bracing for its impact. A post-budget survey by the British Chambers of Commerce has revealed that about 55% of firms expect to increase prices within the next 3 months. This marks a jump from 39% in the previous survey. The proportion of companies planning price hikes has returned to levels last seen at the start of 2023, a time when inflation was still running above 10%. And rising labour costs are cited as the primary driver of price increases, with 75% of businesses highlighting this concern. The hospitality, transport and logistics sectors report the most significant pressures. These planned price hikes could fuel inflation further, intensifying challenges for households already grappling with the cost of living crisis. Inflation reached 2.6% in the year to November, the highest level since March. For more, we're joined by Roger Casali in Rome. He's a former member of the UK Parliament for the Labour Party. Welcome to TRT World, Roger. Now, with more than half of firms planning price hikes, how might this impact inflation and the broader UK economy in the coming months?
Well, good morning. If prices go up, that will impact inflation negatively. Inflation will rise. We'll have to see whether these price rises actually occur, and if they do, whether they then continue to rise or whether it's a one-off rise. We'll have to see how the Bank of England responds. Because, of course, the Bank of England will potentially keep interest rates higher for longer to try to keep inflation down. It is worrying if inflation goes up, and we need to make sure that that doesn't happen. Let's remember that compared to 3 and 2 years ago, inflation is much lower than it was, but we don't want it to start going up again.
Right. Now, why are labour costs such a significant pressure point for businesses, particularly in sectors like hospitality, transport and logistics?
Well, labour costs, you mentioned hospitality. Labour costs in hospitality have risen considerably since Britain left the European Union, because a lot of people, young people in particular, from other EU member states would come to Britain and work, in particular in the hospitality sector. And so there have been shortages in those areas, and those have driven wages up.
Right, and
But I think you mentioned, you also, in your introduction, you mentioned the measures that the government has taken to raise employers' national insurance contributions. Of course, that's also an additional cost on labour.
Right, and you did mention potential cuts by the Bank of England. Markets are still expecting at least 3 more. Do you believe policymakers will have that flexibility given rising inflationary pressures?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question? Sorry.
Do you believe policymakers still have that flexibility given rising inflationary costs pressures? We are expecting at least 3 more.
Well, of course, the interest rate is set by the Bank of England, and the Bank of England is independent of the policymakers as far as the government policymakers are concerned. I think the policymakers within the Bank of England have a very strict constitution to follow. They have a very strict rule to follow. They have to set interest rates in a way that is going to keep inflation at around 2%. So no, I don't think they have a lot of flexibility. If inflation starts to go up, they'll have to hold interest rates higher for longer. I think they do want to bring interest rates down because they're concerned about the lack of economic growth in the UK economy. And one way to stimulate that would be to bring about further reductions in interest rates. And I think if inflation starts to pick up again, then the Bank of England will want to hold interest rates higher for longer.
OK, we will have to leave it there. Roger Casali, former Labour MP, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Now, a quick look at some of the other top business stories from around the world. Tencent stock has plunged 7% in Hong Kong, its biggest drop since October, after the US blacklisted the company over alleged links to the Chinese military. CATL, a key battery supplier to Tesla, was also added to the list of entities with ties to the People's Liberation Army. Both companies quickly denied the accusations, calling the decision a mistake. US Steel and Japan's Nippon Steel are suing the Biden administration after a proposed $14 billion deal was stalled in a national security review by a Treasury Department committee. Both companies claim Biden's decision was driven by political favoritism toward the United Steelworkers Union. They're also suing union President David McCall and Cleveland-Cliffs CEO for allegedly coordinating to derail the deal. Steelmaker ArcelorMittal is closing down 2 plants and a rail unit in South Africa, affecting 3,500 jobs. The company says low steel prices and record Chinese exports have forced the decision. However, coke-making operations in the city of Newcastle will continue at reduced levels. The closures will impact key construction and public works materials. And Singapore and Malaysia have signed a deal to create a new economic zone along their border, aiming to boost investment and job creation. The zone will promote 100 projects in the next decade, offering tax benefits to attract businesses. Officials estimate the initiative could create more than 100,000 jobs and add $26 billion annually to Malaysia's economy by 2030. Sports broadcasting business is undergoing a major transformation as viewership surges to record numbers. With new online platforms challenging traditional broadcasters, young audiences are redefining engagement, causing a shift in sports viewership. Previously, sports fans gathered around their TVs at a scheduled time to watch live matches. But today, the story is different. A growing number of young fans are turning to social media and other platforms like YouTube for highlights and commentary. In 2024, YouTube sports content skyrocketed by 45%. The surge has a lot to do with influencer-led sports commentary on live sporting events. Streaming platforms have also changed their business models on sports media. In America, the value of sports media rights value nearly doubled from $14.6 billion in 2015 to $30 billion in 2024. Competition from streaming giants like Amazon, Netflix and Disney intensified, with each seeking lucrative rights. The story is the same elsewhere. These trends are inspiring broadcasters worldwide to rethink their strategies as well. Traditional broadcasters like Sky Sports have also launched streaming services to meet global demand and stay relevant. They're offering viewers access to lower league matches and other sports like tennis, golf and boxing. Formula One has also jumped on the digital bandwagon, boosting its deal value from $4 million to a staggering $80 million in 2024. Legacy media is adapting and learning to innovate as competition stiffens. But perhaps the most fascinating innovations are from unexpected places. For example, in Brazil, where football clubs own their own broadcasting rights and social media platforms, popular streamers can attract more than 48 million viewers per day. This success shows how streamers can rival traditional broadcasters, not by replacing them, but by offering something unique like live reactions, personal commentary, and a sense of community. For more on this, let's bring in Calvin Emeka-Onuka. He is a publisher at ACL Sports. Good to have you with us on TRT World. Now, how are younger audiences reshaping the sports broadcasting industry at the moment?
And good morning from London. Thanks for having me. And they're really reshaping broadcasting sports. What I would say is that they are consuming the wraparound shows around live sports. That is what they are reshaping more than anything else. But when it comes to live sport, the traditional media, the pay TV channels and the free-to-air broadcasters, they still call the shot. People, the FIFAs, the UEFAs, and the CAFs of this world, when it comes to selling their rights for their major their major tournaments and their major leagues, they will still go first to traditional broadcasters. But what is happening is that the broadcasting of all these matches don't end immediately the final whistle goes. So all the other things that happen, the shows around the stadiums, the shows around the fans, those kind of things that traditional media cannot cater for. Yes, the streaming platforms can go ahead and they do that to attract and keep the young fans.
And can traditional broadcasters adapt quickly enough to compete with these streaming giants?
I think it's the streaming giants that are actually competing with the traditional broadcasters, not the other way around. Like I said earlier, the CAFs and the FIFAs and the UEFAs, they would offer, in fact, domestic leagues, the Bundesliga, the Premier League, the League One, the La Liga, they would rather give their rights, their main TV broadcast rights to traditional TV companies first, and then what is left is what they share to the streaming platforms. So I'll say this: the traditional media companies are here to stay. It's the streaming platforms that are making themselves valuable outside live feeds, outside live matches, outside live live broadcasts. So that's where they come into their own. They have more time. They have more flexibility to do things around these matches and events.
Okay, Calvin, Amika, Anuka, we will have to leave it there, I'm afraid. Thank you very much for your analysis.
Thank you.
To Canada now, where Justin Trudeau has announced he's stepping down as Prime Minister. He announced his resignation as leader of the Liberal Party, but will stay on as head of the government until his replacement is appointed. Craig Boswell has the story.
Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is stepping aside.
I intend to resign as party leader, as Prime Minister, after the party selects its next leader through a robust, nationwide, competitive process. Last night, I asked the President of the Liberal Party to begin that process.
The announcement from his Ottawa residence ends his 9 years in office.
This country deserves a real choice in the next election, and it has become clear to me that if I'm having to fight internal battles, I cannot be the best option in that election.
The upheaval between Trudeau and his own Liberal Party broke out after U.S. President-elect Donald Trump proposed a 25% tariff on all Canadian products coming into the U.S. Trudeau made a surprise visit to Florida to talk with Trump in late November, but disagreements over Trudeau's handling of the situation led to resignations, including Canada's Deputy Prime Minister, and Parliament has been deadlocked.
That's why this morning I advised the Governor-General that we need a new session of Parliament. She has granted this request, and the House will now be prorogued until March 24th.
Remaining in office until a successor is chosen means Trudeau will lead Canada in the first months of Trump's U.S. presidency and will have to manage tariff talks. Canada is the U.S.'s second largest trading partner behind Mexico. Imports from Canada totaled more than $344 billion in 2024. Trudeau calling for Parliament to be suspended until late March indicates a time frame for a nationwide race to name his successor. Recent polls show Trudeau's Liberal Party trailing Conservatives by a wide margin, with an election that is due later this year. Craig Boswell, TRT World.
Pakistan's Prime Minister recently announced an economic revival program that seeks to make the South Asian nation a $1 trillion economy. The 5-year plan sets ambitious targets to transform the country's economic landscape from being dependent on IMF contributions to self-reliance. Cameron Youssef has more from Islamabad.
For a while, political players in Pakistan set aside their differences and shared the stage with the Prime Minister. The occasion was the launch of what the government dubbed as the Homegrown Economic Revival Program. The 5-year plan focuses on 5 E's: exports, e-Pakistan, equity and empowerment, and environment.
We have two paths before us. One is business as usual. If we continue on the current path, our economy will reach $500 billion by 2035. The second path is to utilize all of our resources and means, work as a team Pakistan, and embark on a long march. By doing so, we can achieve a 1 trillion economy by 2035.
Pakistan's current economic size is around 365 billion US dollars.
Pakistan has the potential to become even, $1 trillion economy, there's no doubt. But the key fundamental point in this whole debate is what kind of economy? Do you really want to have only a GDP which is benefiting the few people? Or do you want an economy which is actually running on sustainable footing? You don't have to go back to IMF.
Pakistan has availed a record number of IMF bailout programs. The latest one was approved by the Washington-based lender in September, allowing the country's economy to remain afloat.
Here people don't have bread to eat, yet they increased oil prices at the start of the new year. If they were sincere, they wouldn't have taken such steps.
The current government has introduced a new economic program. They are making efforts and we hope it will bring improvement.
There is now relative economic stability. Inflation and interest rates are down. The stock market is at a record high. Pakistan's economy has struggled between the boom and bust cycle. Economic growth achieved in the past was not sustainable. The new government wants to alter that. The government has set ambitious targets such as doubling exports in 5 years. Economists believe the key to achieving those milestones requires crucial and painful reforms that Pakistan has avoided so far. Crucially, political instability and volatile security can hamper Pakistan's economic revival plan. Kamran Yusuf, TRT World, Islamabad.
Syrians in the city of Idlib now have access to public transport, connecting them to other regions and alleviating years of isolation. What once required risky and lengthy journeys has now become a relatively straightforward trip. TRT World, Noor Kormosh reports.
For the first time in over 10 years, people in Idlib can board buses and travel directly to cities like Hama, Aleppo, and even Damascus. The newfound connectivity is more than just a logistical improvement. It symbolizes progress for a region that has endured years of hardship.
There is a huge difference now. We used to suffer so much. Going from Aleppo to Damascus shouldn't take more than 3 hours, but it took much longer. Checkpoints used to hassle passengers, steal luggage and take money. Thank God, now things are much better. The passengers are very comfortable.
Drivers and passengers alike describe a stark contrast to the challenges of the past decade.
Previously, transportation was a nightmare. Over dozens of checkpoints, they took money and sometimes made random arrests. Now it is easier, cheaper, and more efficient for us workers.
Passenger movement increased after Assad's fall. The Transportation Administration worked hard to organize everything. Before, passengers had to take dangerous routes, risking their lives and paying up to $400. Now it's safe and affordable.
Roads to cities like Hama are now easily accessible, with passengers experiencing shorter travel times and a renewed sense of security.
We used to spend over 2.5 days to go from Idlib to Hama. Now it's much easier. Passengers used to pay $25 to get to Hama, but now it's only $3. The travel is safer and smoother for everyone.
The government has spared no effort in supporting drivers and passengers alike, ensuring safe and financially sustainable travel.
Before Assad's fall, traveling from Idlib to other Syrian governorates took days on dangerous and unregulated roads. Now these trips take only a few hours, and while people remember the difficult journeys of the past, they say this change brings a sense of normalcy and freedom, making visits and work travel much easier and cheaper.
Passengers say this newly organized system offers a safe and more secure travel experience, allowing them and their loved ones to journey without fear.
I used to fear for my son's life whenever we traveled. Passing through checkpoints made me nervous. Now everything is perfect. The available checkpoints work to facilitate transportation for us.
For the people of Syria, this newfound access to public transportation symbolizes a step forward, reconnecting with loved ones and rebuilding lives disrupted by war. Commerciality World, Hama, Syria.
Well, that's all your business news for now. Thanks for watching. The Newsmakers is next.